So, welcome everybody to another episode of the Solar Journey. My guest today is Mario Schirru. Welcome, Mario.
Welcome. Thank you, Torsten. It's a pleasure to be here today.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, Mario has been in the renewable energy business since 2008. That's when he started his career as a project developer in Italy for a German wind park developer, GEO or Geo. And 5 years later, he moved to Germany and started working as an investment manager for Capital Stage, which was later then renamed and rebranded as Encavis. He's still with Encavis, where he was appointed investment director in 2015. And he then took over the responsibility for the investment activities. And in 2019, he became responsible for the operations team. His background is a mechanical engineering. He's got a bachelor degree in that, a master's degree in control engineering. And he also got a MBA from the Mannheim Business School, which is a business school in Germany. So, Mario, you cover both sections or two sections, that's engineering and also finance. It's from your CV, it seems like you're switching forth and back. So you've got two big hearts for those, let's say, two different sections. How do you balance that? What triggered your initial interest in engineering, and then your initial career was then also in the investment section?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I started looking at renewables as an industry, I was sort of I just finished high school or the university, and I really was still very much looking for a technical activity and technical job, and because I liked what I've done at university, and the topics, the sort of the challenge of solving problems was very attractive to me, and it was in the end sort of by a coincidence that I started working as a developer, where I thought that the technical skills would have been more important than in the end it turned out to be, because it's really a lot about relationships. Mm-hmm. And when you start a new project, when you try to convince all the stakeholders, landowners, municipalities, authorities, to support an initiative, yes, of course, you have to present an argument and convince them with numbers and figures and everything. But in the end, you have to also convince them that it's a good thing. And I think that most of the people in the end still are convinced by emotions. Once the figures sort of are right, there is something else that brings them the thing over the finish line. And I think this was sort of something I learned during that 5 years. 5 years that have been very interesting, because I really got the chance to look at many different things, basically, again, from the technical ones to things more connected to, I say, planning issues, which again I was not really prepared for, because there is a shift into legal aspects that was new to me, more financial, of course, because we had to understand how the business plan could work out. And I also had the chance to interact with a lot of different people, ultimately also the local politicians and also central politicians in our case played a role. And it was great to sort of discover this whole new world and to find sort of the way to manage these projects. And after 5 years of intense, I would say, also fights, I think I can use that word with local authorities and bureaucracy, I understood that I would have loved to change a little bit my role, and that's when I moved from the developer into the investment sort of activities. I was offered this opportunity by Capital Stage. The company was quite small, but had a great drive, great people, a great team, and yeah, we managed then to grow the business. And the sort of the last switch to the operations happened when we realized that the portfolio had grown to a significant size, and that we basically would not only need to continue growing it, building up, but we would also need to sort of harmonize it, to create something that is not a sum of individual projects, but it's a real portfolio. And I think this has been my work for the last 3 years. I think we are now really understanding the power of a portfolio, which is not the sum of single assets. It's something more.
Okay, excellent. We'll come back to that later when we talk about Encavis in detail. I'd love to understand that when you talk about the portfolio and that it's more than the individual sum. Cool. But what made you move initially to move into the solar and wind industry? I saw in your CV you had a internship with Ford, the motor company.
Right.
In your very initial internship, only a few months, but still you looked into, let's say, the conventional, let's say at least back then, industry before you then moved into solar and wind.
Definitely. As a young student of mechanical engineering, I think everyone dreams of getting into the automotive industry, and yeah, that was my dream back then. But then life sort of told me something else, and again I discovered the industry a couple of years later, and I definitely think it has been the right decision for me. I think that this industry is simply great. There's so much to be done, and it's really something which is I mean, it's one of the industries for the future, I think. And of course, mobility is still it will play a role. Will undergo substantial changes because everything will change also there. But yes, I think, and somehow maybe the things will even converge. I mean, the electrification of mobility is a fact, but yes, I basically chose the other way. Again, the way things are in life, sometimes they happen because they simply have to happen, and in that case, I think it went like that.
Yeah. Was there a special event which triggered that, or
yeah, I think
how did it happen?
It was the consciousness about climate change, I would say. The fact that we had to do something for our planet. I had the chance to, or I was lucky enough to go to the German school in Rome, where the topics around climate and sort of sustainability were addressed fairly early. Also in the, let's say in the year 1995, this was already a topic when it still was not a mainstream one. So I remember, again, we at the German school in Rome being sort of, sensitive to some topics that are not really easy to find in mainstream media.
Yeah. Excellent. So let's talk about the. Maybe you want to line out what Encavis is doing. So it's easy to read up on the internet, but in your words, what is Encavis doing? What do you propose to your customers? What's your core business and your business model?
Our core business is, I mean, we are an operator of wind and solar plants, and we are not a developer. This is, I think, an important one. We have a quite sort of prudent approach to energy and to business, because we think that, and we think that the stability sort of is one of the most of the things that our shareholders care most about. And maybe I think it's maybe in this sense it's important to reflect or to present the history of this company, because the company was really active as a private equity investor in clean tech until, I would say, 2008, 2007, 2008, when the financial crisis sort of opened the eyes on many things, among which the volatility and sort of the risk of certain investments. And during that years, the board, the management team decided to invest into a much more stable asset class in a much more stable business, which was given by the subsidies, by subsidized renewable assets. And we really, if I have to, I mean, I joined the company in 2013, but even back then, the energy was not really the key point or the sort of the most important driver. It was really the stability of the business plan, of the business case, and sort of the consciousness about the fact that we are ultimately producing energy came some years later, when we realized that the portfolio, and we will talk about that later, when we realized that the portfolio has grown to an important size, and moreover, this also sort of made us very clear that we have to grow the portfolio even more in order to play a role in the energy market, in the energy business, because energy business is about scale in the end.
Yeah.
And this is basically this, and somehow we still have this DNA of a conservative approach to things. Again, development is where everything starts, but it's also a business which is fundamentally different than operating the assets, and so we've decided to focus ourselves on a certain segment, and we produce energy. We have our first clients. We deliver the energy to, particularly Amazon is well known in Spain. One of our biggest plants supplies energy to AWS, and this is what we do.
Yeah. So when you say you're operator, it's you own and run the wind farms. Yeah.
That's correct. That's what Encavis AG does. We also have.
So you buy them from an EPC, or
from a developer at a late stage, when basically all the authorizations have been granted, and so the plant can be built, or
you build it
in that case.
Okay.
Then we basically construct, we build it through an EPC, which we appoint. And very often we still buy the plants once they are operational and have been sort of built by the developer, financed, and we just take them over and include them in our portfolio.
Okay, so it's two ways. You either buy the rights for a, let's say, readily designed and authorized project, or you buy finished wind parks. Do you also invest into solar parks, or is it wind
only? Of course.
Okay.
No, our portfolio
it's wind and
is
solar. Yeah.
Yes, and the solar part is the biggest part of our portfolio. We try to have a balance, something like 75% of solar and 25% of wind in terms of capacity.
Yeah. Is there a strategy behind it, or does it just happen, the ratio of solar and wind?
Well, there is a strategy, because we think that that it gives a sort of a well-balanced cash flow over the year. First thing. So we in the summer, of course, we make a lot of we produce a lot of energy through the solar plant. In the winter, it's more the wind part which sort of drives the numbers. But in general, we believe that it's a good mix also in terms of a supply of energy. If you sort of put the curves sort of one above the other, you end up with a very nice profile also in terms of output. So we believe that it's a good mix. Again, we don't have to follow it dogmatically, but we feel very comfortable with that proportion.
Okay. So I know that capital stage, so the previous name of Encavis, they were also invested into like a tech companies, like one of those thin film silicon module producers in Berlin, which was like kind of a technology bet. And then you just described it to that Encavis decided to go into more secure financing schemes, which is now the back then it was the subsidized wind and solar farms, and where the safe investment was, you know, pretty exactly what's the investment required. On the other side, you knew exactly through the guaranteed subsidies how much money you would earn over time, right? So that's the first move, and then now it seems that you describe like a third phase where it's not about the subsidies, but you talk about you as a energy producer. Is this where, let's say, the business to business, the private energy transaction comes in? Is that what you mean by you as an energy producer?
Yeah, I think
that less dependent on the subsidies.
Right. Yeah. Yes, I think the whole industry is sort of going in that direction for different reasons. I mean, I think we have proven that the technology is mature and can be sort of adopted without the need of subsidies, because it's sort of self-sustaining. The technology costs went down significantly. We are the cheapest form of energy. So in the end, this is sort of a trend which brings this industry to the point where it does not really need subsidies anymore. Will be interesting to see how the whole game about battery is going to play out, because there we see it is still more difficult to find really long-term agreements which are necessary for the financing. But this is something else. We can touch base on that later. In general, yes, we are ready to become a supplier of energy. We see that the interest is very high, also not only on the big corporates, which have signed the first big PPAs and which are still sort of quite active, but also smaller companies are now looking for supplier of really renewable energy. They still can opt for renewable energy contracts with the big utilities, but they also like, I think, to have a supplier like we are, where, I mean, a very pure player in this sense, and so definitely this is something we want to continue to do.
So subsidies, like the guaranteed revenue from by law was the old driver. Now it's PPAs, power purchase agreements. What's the share currently between, let's say, subsidized cash flow and PPAs, which is on a business to business level?
Yeah, it's a difficult question, because in the end, the cash flow from subsidized plants is still higher. Of course, the tariffs the old tariffs are way higher than the price that we see now on the market. At the same time, I mean, technology costs back then were much higher, so you needed to have that amounts for the megawatt hour to build the plants. Now you need less. I would say we have, yeah. So in terms of share of the cash flow, it's not that easy. I would say in terms of capacity, we have still 3/4 of our capacity, maybe even more, which is subsidized, and 1/4 the new recently acquired assets that are on the market, sort of, yeah, you call them in grid parity, where an off-taker pays a price in the long term, which allows us to have a profitable business and to operate the plants.
Yeah. So for future wind and solar parks, are the subsidies still relevant for you, or is it
less and less? I mean, there are still some countries in which we have schemes in place which we of course look at, but and there are some special situations which we still could apply for tariffs or buy plants that are subsidized, but we don't make this a condition anymore, in the sense that if the plant and the asset fits in our portfolio, we just buy it and operate it without having sort of limitations or conditions on the form of the remuneration.
Yeah. And in which countries are you focusing on? And when we talk about subsidies and PPAs, what are, let's say, the most attractive for pure PPA projects?
I would say basically all the European countries, the West European countries. We have Italy, Spain. Let's say like in the first wave of solar, I think also second waves goes from the south to the north. So in Spain and Italy, we see a lot of activity in both in development, in construction, and in PPAs. Germany, being a very ambitious country in terms of targets, is a very important and very interesting country as well. France has been historically a little bit difficult for us to enter. We have some plans, but it's even more local than other countries, I would say. But definitely it's an interesting country as well. The UK also is interesting, increasingly interesting. Denmark is a country where we are where we expect good things to happen, and where we are building up a very nice portfolio of both wind and solar. And I think, yes, we have some plans in Sweden, both wind and solar. So yes, I would say there are many countries, and we are basically everywhere in Europe, which is good. And again, at the moment, I would say, yeah, the countries where we see most activities are Italy, Germany, and maybe Spain, and the UK is following.
Yes. What about Portugal? I went a few times. Plenty of wind on the coast.
Yes, Portugal is a very interesting country. It has still some the last process I followed when I was still active in the investment team were still, how do you say, auctions based. They were auction based, and the bids were really very low. We don't have yet projects in Portugal. I think in terms of irradiation and wind resource, it's an interesting country. We just didn't manage to really enter it properly so far, but we think this will happen as well. There's also there is a lot of things going on.
And you mentioned France. It's a difficult market in terms of regulation, or what's?
Yeah, both. I mean, the nuclear power still plays an important role in the energy mix, right? There have been now recently some announcements and some actions in order to revise retroactively the tariffs that were granted in the first solar plan. So it's a country in which the messages and the signals are sort of contradictory. In a third way, I think there will something will have to happen, but at the same time, they are still very reluctant to move ahead with a lot of decisions. So let's see. Again, it's something we follow, we observe. There are some very good French players actually that are developing the business and the market there. We will see.
Okay. And do you limit yourself to Europe because you think there's enough business for you to grow? Or, I mean, with your competence over so many years, you try to make a hit overseas? We consider that, and we still consider that from time to time. We believe, as I said it before, that you have to reach a decent size in order to make a good business in the different countries. And we see a lot of opportunities in the countries where we are already active. So yes, for the time being, there is basically no need. And again, if
an interesting opportunity happens to make a big step, but also then it would mean buying or building up an important portfolio, and we would do that. But again, for the time being, we don't think that this has to happen. Europe has very ambitious goals, and also countries where things sort of at the beginning were happening a little bit slowly are now picking up. Greece is a good example. There's a lot of activities over there. So yes, I think that, that there will be plenty of opportunities. There are plenty of opportunities in Europe for us to grow.
Yeah. So, so you're a company of roughly 170 people, employees. What's your idea? I mean, you could take it. Do you want to take it to 1,000, or do you just want to become more efficient and keep it always below 200? So, what's your company's strategy here?
No. We love to be lean. We love to be a small team in which things can be discussed easily, in which sort of we don't have to make a big sort of decision rounds in order to get things done. So we love that, and we only, I mean, we don't move ahead in a dogmatic way. We hire people whenever we feel we need them. One thing that's important, and I think characterizes us also, is the fact that we love to work with partners. We have, for example, the whole O&M business, which we believe will be very interesting also in future. And I will come to that point in a minute if it's of interest. We are doing it. We're covering it with partners of us, in which we have also a share. The company based in Parma called Stern Energy, which has been working on our plans since 2008, and or maybe a little bit later when we entered Italy, I would say 2012. And they have been doing a great job so far. They do it, very well. So we don't feel like we need to build up that team internally. We want to have people who are able to engage them at sort of the right level. So we want to understand what the guys do, but we don't need to do that all on ourselves. And so by this, I think we manage to find a good balance. The guys sort of serve a much bigger customer base, which is good because they sort of are forced to be on the market and to be competitive in whatever they do. And so this is a way that we've experienced as very promising, and this is something that we could continue doing also in other areas where we want to grow.
Okay, yeah. So with your 170 people, how many gigawatts of production capacity, or maybe terawatt hours, do you manage? Just to get an idea of your say output.
The portfolio, the portfolio grows consistently and constantly, but I think we are now, I can tell you with precise, we're around 3 gigawatt. We have the recent numbers and figures always on our website, but we have more or less 3 gigawatts of capacity. And
it's solar plus wind, sorry.
Yeah. Solar plus wind. And on the AG side, because I told you that we are also managing plans for third-party investors, for institutional investors. On the AG, we own 2.013 gigawatt.
Yeah.
So 2 gigawatt,
okay.
which is a nice portfolio. Yeah. Again, we want to grow it more, of course, but it's a good base.
Yeah. So for the future, PPAs will be the dominating scheme. So maybe you want to outline how do you sell your energy? How does it work, and what are the specific challenges for you? And maybe I think that's where the aspect of having a portfolio or having a certain size should come in.
Right. And this is something we sort of understood only in recent years. Let's say it this way. Historically, each plant is considered as an individual SPV, right? We also operate the plants like having them in individual companies. And for the time being, we are still selling the energy sort of individually, each asset. Of course, we do see that putting them together creates an advantage in terms of output. It becomes more stable, and it's also valued in a different way. So again, especially for the future, we are really now considering to building up mixed portfolios, which are then meant to be selling the energy to a certain customer who has specific needs. It will always happen through a PPA in the end, and we still very much love long-term agreements because they give us the stability that we need and that our shareholders love. So this won't change. I think the combination of assets could be something that we push further in order to understand and to create portfolios that are, as I said before, optimizing the output in terms of megawatt hour, reducing the imbalance costs and stuff like that. We see that it definitely plays a role, how big the portfolio is, and yes, so this is something we are really working on intensively to understand how to do things in the future. Again, given the fact that there will definitely be a substantial stake of long-term agreements.
Yeah. So let's use Amazon Web Services that you mentioned before as one of your customers. Of course, they want to have 24/7 electricity. Fortunately, they have the strategy to go 100% renewable. So how does it work? There, of course, you have solar and wind in Spain, where you mentioned.
In Spain, we have only solar. In Spain, we have only solar, and this
only
is
solar. So
only solar.
So it's a trivial question maybe for you, but I think it's interesting how this is managed, because the sun doesn't shine at night, even in Spain.
That's definitely the case.
So how do you supply energy to Amazon Web Services in Spain during the night?
That's definitely the case. I probably cannot go into too much into the details of the contract, but to make it very short and very simple, we still cannot do that. So we don't supply physical energy in a base load form. So yes, we still have the solar profile, which is a matter of fact, but we see that back then customers were sort of okay with taking what the market was offering. I think also from this point of view, customers are becoming more sophisticated, which will force us to become again, and this is, I think, what I was trying to say before. We will be forced to combine portfolios in a certain way, and probably wind and solar alone won't be enough. We will have to also include the batteries in the portfolio to at least sort of improve from that point of view. Again, we still believe that we believe that solar and batteries do match very well, because it's short cycles when the sun shines, especially in the South Europe. Wind, you usually have longer cycles, a couple of days of wind, and then wind goes down. So it will be a little bit more a challenge. But in general, I think that this will be this, and this is a very interesting discussion we're also having at the moment internally. Who's going to be in the end able to really guarantee base load? Is it going to be the producers like Encavis, or is it basically the whole system and the whole grid to be able to do that? If you look at sort of electric mobility, just to make an example, vehicle to grid is a technology which is somehow mature. It works. It has proven to be worked out, to be working. There is no mainstream adoption yet, but this is something definitely that we have to follow. There will be, as always, players who will specialize on certain aspects, and maybe it's not players like Encavis who have to specialize on delivering base load. Maybe again, it will be a combination of different parties that in the end guarantee that energy is available 24/7 in the amount that is needed.
So so Amazon, so they then have right now multiple contracts. One of them is with you, and for the nighttime they have they get energy from someone else, right?
Yes.
Okay. So so the guarantee of origin business is then not relevant for you because you just sell what you've got, and you don't, at this point, you don't want to be a 24/7 energy supplier where you would like buy and resell electricity, for example, hydro from Norway, just to make Amazon in Spain happy to have them to supply them with 24/7 energy. Yeah.
Yes, I mean there are players, and there is the option for players like Encavis to deliver baseload energy, sort of to become the party. Of course, then we would have the issue of buying energy when we are not producing it, right? Because in the end, what we don't produce, we have to buy. Again, this is something that some players do already. We are careful. We are careful, especially during these times where we see high volatility in prices. It could hit you hard. We've seen some things sort of going also the wrong way last year, I think, or 2021. Yes, in Texas. I think this is also something that is publicly available. I mean, it's and so we are making up our minds. Theoretically, everything is possible. Practically, again, given also our risk profile, we have to be very careful when we consider having also a different role from this point of view. For the time being, we feel very comfortable in managing the positions that we have, sort of the energy that we produce. We feel less comfortable in buying energy that we don't produce from our assets and combining it with our assets in order to deliver it to the customer. This is something that we are, maybe we'll have to get there. Maybe, maybe not. It's ongoing discussions. We will see. We'll see.
Okay. I'm for my private household, I'm a customer of Naturstrom. I'm sure you know them. So they supply me with electricity at night. Right. And they do have their own wind and solar farms, so they obviously are trading energy, right? So they must buy and resell then electricity. So this is exactly the step which you are considering but haven't done yet. So it's yeah,
right. Definitely, we are also not active on the exchange on the market. So we use service providers to sell our energy on the exchange. Okay. But theoretically, yes. Again, practically not the case yet. And Naturstrom, interesting. Again, we should, I don't know, they probably they guarantee you 100% of renewable energy, 100%, not greenwashed. Is it not greenwashed? I don't know how the company works.
I can't measure it, right? But they have
maybe they should
external advisory boards, and they make a big effort to prove that they are 100% renewable.
Yeah, and this is something that is also, again, there are different definitions, I guess, in the end. And again, I don't know Naturstrom at all, so maybe they do things in the best possible way. But in the past, there was a huge discussion about companies buying the guarantees of origin that you mentioned before, just to basically show that the volume in the end that they bought is covered by enough guarantees of origin, sort of guaranteeing you the green energy source, which again is not properly correct. I mean, overall, yes, you can prove that you've delivered enough guarantees of origin, but at night, as you said, a solar plant simply cannot produce energy. So it's not a very easy thing. I think that I don't know at the moment how it works, but I also have a 100% Ökostrom, and I've also not really looked at the details of the bill, but yes, the question is a good one, and probably would have to be asked to the guys.
So, but that's an important issue aspect, right, of the industry. Those guarantees of origin. When I learned first about it, I was surprised in a way. So you basically can sell a kilowatt hours, the physical energy, but you can also sell that guarantee of origin. You can sell the greenness of the kilowatt hour separately, right?
Yes.
And that's pretty mind-boggling in the beginning. Then it makes sense. But there's, of course, it's a kind of a virtual deal, right? And so then the question comes in about transparency, right?
It makes sense because in the end, once the electrons are fed into the grid, they don't have a color anymore.
Yeah.
You cannot distinguish them anymore. Power is power, right? So basically, just being able to prove that you have fed into the grid a certain amount of megawatt hour produced by renewables sort of is itself a statement. And you can, if you say basically, I'm taking the energy out of the plug and I have the certificate that it comes from renewables, sort of you match them and you're fine. Yeah, in the end, and this is why increasing amount of number of companies want to also be able to point out to know which asset is providing them energy, so that they know at which time of the day, at which hour of the day they have taken a certain amount of energy, and it sort of opens the discussion how to prove and how to which asset to point, while the renewable asset is not operating. So I don't know, but it's coming. And the transparency issue is a big one, and there is an increasing need for transparency, and I think this is a good thing, by the way, because it pushes everyone to be simply more open and more transparent.
Yeah, definitely an aspect to watch, I think, because since it's such a virtual digital business, I think to watch out for fake GOOs, I would imagine, must be super important, so that we don't run into the wrong direction here.
No, I think, what does it mean fake? I mean, the GOOs are issued by sort of reputable authorities, so you know that basically there are no fake GOs circulating around. The ways which use you make out of it. So
you mentioned storage. Obviously, as renewables produce more and more energy, and avoid this issue we just talked about, storage is relevant. It costs coming down crazy because of the increased volume. So what's your take? How do you position yourself? You mentioned the issues. You're not as a battery owner, you're not producing, but you're supplying in a way. So it's kind of a funny situation. I think there's also legal issues around it, if you are a utility or not. So can you outline the complexity of running a business on storage?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it is a very complex business. You have multiple revenue streams. On the solar and the wind farm, it's easy. You just produce the energy and you sell it, right? The batteries, you can provide different services to the grid. Or you can just do arbitrage, sort of loading and unloading whenever it makes sense. You can do this in the longer, sort of with longer cycles. You can do that for shorter cycles, also to reduce the imbalancing costs. So it's really a complex world with different uses of the assets. And we have not made our first investment. We have been looking at tons of opportunities over the last years, both in the long term, sort of by logging in long-term contracts for the use of a battery with traders or suppliers. We have also looked at short-term usage of batteries, and I think we will be ready to move very, very soon. Mainly given the fact, or maybe given the fact that the volatility is increasing and we don't expect it to go low in the long run, to be lower in the long run, first thing. And secondly, because the technology costs, as you said, are going down. So I think it's not, we won't have to wait much, but for the time being, to be honest, the business cases were not good enough. We could have done something just to show that we are working on that area, but we are still very conscious and cautious when we invest our money. We want to invest it well, and so as long as we don't find any convincing business case, despite, again, it would make a lot of sense for the grid and for in general, for the system, we have not placed a bet yet.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I guess it shouldn't be a bet when you want to make money, save money here. You mentioned the O&M business, so operation and maintenance of solar and wind parks, and you have a share in the Italian company you mentioned in a subsidiary.
Yes.
Oh, it's not a subsidiary; it's a independent company.
So, it's an independent company which has different sort of it has the headquarters in Italy, but it itself has subsidiaries in the countries where we are active. So in the Netherlands, in which I didn't mention before. Sorry, Netherlands, Italy, of course, Germany, and the UK. They are maintaining our plants.
Yeah. So what's interesting about the business in terms of technology or the business model? Why you mentioned that it's such a interesting sector of the industry?
Yeah, for many years, the O&M was looked at like a very sort of simple business with low margins, something just that needed to be done, right? The availability of the asset of the plant should have been as high as possible, and a bad O&M would have reduced your profitability, but you could have survived. Now we see that O&M becomes an integral part of the value chain, because first of all, you need to have the things that I mentioned before: availability, reliability of the plants, blah blah, to a certain price in order to be competitive when you sell the energy. But, and this is the most important thing, we're seeing that in the end, these assets age, also on the solar ones. You might think that once you build the plant, you can leave it like this for the next 50 years. And this is not the case. First thing, we see that there are some things to be done, also some substantial activities to be performed on the assets. Mainly, since we have relatively young assets, the issues we have are still covered by the guarantees, but still you have to spot the degradation issues. You have to claim in case against the module suppliers, and you have to then substitute modules or inverters or whatever. But even without that, we have now realized that after 10, 15, 20 years, the technology improvements allow you to use the same area in a different way by simply the increased efficiency of the modules allows you to have the same power you used to have before on a much smaller area, and that you can gain surface to extend your plant, which then wouldn't be subsidized, but it overall gives you a bigger capacity. And we've done this in a couple of projects. The ones, I think one of these stories has also been published on LinkedIn, where we basically showed that all of a sudden we were able to produce more energy out of a certain area that we had used for the last 10 years with a certain capacity. And all of these, sort of the ability to really understand what can be done where, is something that the O&M can substantially help you to do. And we are again seeing that by intervening on the single assets, a lot of value can be generated, a lot of value can be created, and so we believe that this is definitely something that will play a role. It's a growing market, and it will continue to grow even if no capacity is sort of built out, right? Because the construction, you can only construct the business or the plant once you build a new plant, but you have to learn to maintain it for the next 20 years. And again, the maintenance activities are significant. So it's a growing market, even in case the new build slows down, which is not being the case and not expected so far, but could be an opportunity. And we could go even further. I think that knowing exactly how the plant is performing could also improve the quality of forecasting for, let's say, the activities on the market, and sort of the reliability of the supply.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of aspects.
Yeah. So it's when I try to structure it for myself. So it's one thing is really the importance is to spot faults in the solar parks, wind farms. So you do observe faulty modules. So what's the key? And the second part would be repowering, right? So you actually replace solar modules with more efficient ones. And the third part is really the forecasting. So that gives you a better, your sales team, I guess, gets better pricing if you have less volatile forecast. On the first part, the degradation of faulty components, what are the key issues that you observe? Do you have a kind of a Pareto analysis, or is there a classic aspect, and what do you do against it?
Yes, you basically start realizing that the performance ratio is going down, which means the relationship between the amount of energy that the sun is sort of giving us and the amount of energy that the asset is converting into electric energy. And this is something, again, that has to be monitored constantly. There are many factors that have an impact on the performance ratio, and this is where a good O&M provider sort of makes a difference. They are able to spot in advance and to sort of anticipate the whole process of claiming. They are supporting you in the claims by doing the right analysis on the ground, on the modules, to convince the manufacturer that this is a warranty case. And yes, so basically it's about not wasting time before intervening, not accepting or not sort of ignoring the fact that the performance of the plant is slowly going down.
Yeah. So is it easy to claim faulty modules, or what's the experience? How do you go about it? Do you need a third-party auditor to measure individual modules, or
yes,
what's the standard process?
Very often you do need them or laboratory analysis, but in general we have been lucky enough to have big players providing our modules or supplying us with the modules, and big players usually are also very sort of serious when it comes down to, or honest when it comes down to claims. Again, you mentioned before a couple of companies that produce thin film modules that are not on the market anymore. On that, it would become difficult to get
replacement.
Sort of replacement. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, and on the repower section, that's interesting. So so you really kick out the solar modules which have an age of, let's say, 10 years, and you put in the ones with a 30% more efficiency. Can you what do you do with the, let's say, second-hand modules? Is there a specific market for it, or how do you go about it?
Yeah, before that, please allow me to
Sure.
differentiate between repowering and revamping. Are two different terms. When you repower, you usually increase the output and the capacity of the plant by using the same area. When you do the revamping, which is what we normally do due to the subsidies, you only sort of you keep the power as sort of authorized, as qualified for the subsidies, and you just use a smaller area or a smaller surface, and basically the surface that becomes free you can use for a new plant, as a matter of fact, which you can build and sort of sell the energy, but which is not subsidized, right? The subsidy only refers to a certain capacity, which is fair.
Okay.
Otherwise,
yeah.
it would be dangerous.
Right.
And yes, the whole question about the old modules is, as a matter of fact, also an interesting topic. There are some companies that are focusing on the recycling of the modules, and I'm very curious to see what they will manage to do. For the time being, we use partners and third parties who manage the whole process of sort of taking them, certifying us that they are going to deal properly with them, in case recycling them according to the best practices, or selling them on the secondary market after being sort of restored to a certain point to become operational again.
Yeah.
But this is something that we enter into an agreement with companies that specialize on management of these modules, and then we're out. Again, in Italy, the experience we've made was mainly with people who have then recycled the modules.
Because I mean, this is going to be a huge market, right? I mean, right now we look at an age of the industry of, let's say, 20 years, let's say even 10 years in terms of volume, significant volume, which is close to zero in terms of, let's say, cosmic times, right? And that's, I guess, what we actually talk about, right? So this is going to be a very important aspect of the future. How do you do recycling, reuse of those solar modules? Interesting.
Definitely.
Yeah. You mentioned the aspect of vehicle to grid, which is related to storage. What's your hope? What's your forecast on that?
It's a very interesting technology, and I think it will become mature for mainstream adoption. Definitely, for us as an Encavis, it's way too far away from our business model so far. So it's really something that we will follow individually because of personal interest, not as a okay. company. But I think that also in the area or in the industry, or in the sector of renewable energy, technology will provide solutions that we cannot think about at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm pretty confident about that. We think that the ability to process data is going to provide completely new scenarios, new solutions, new approaches, and it's something we are very fascinated by.
Yeah. Let me jump to another topic. You own actually those assets, right? So you need lots of funds to buy them. So I would expect that mainly pension funds who are interested in a super safe, non-volatile cash flow, and also conservative, but secured profit could be your key investors. Is that am I right, or where does your money come from for your big solar park assets?
Yeah, we have different. I mean, this is something that our CFO could talk about for hours. We have different different ways, sort of raising funds. The more traditional one, and still one that plays an important role for us, is the funding at SPV level through project finance.
SPV?
Right. SPV, sort of at the level of the individual project or plant.
Okay.
We have dedicated vehicles, special purpose vehicles.
Okay.
Sort of it's companies, small companies, where you can ring fence the risk somehow. You can raise debt in order to then construct the plant, and they still play an important role. Then we are also increasingly having sort of fundraising, basically instruments at corporate level. This is also something where basically Encavis AG places an instrument and raises some funds. And ultimately, we have not done that for the last years, but still, it still is an option for us, being a listed company, to just make a straight capital increase by issuing new shares. So we have different tools and instruments that we can use, and I think we've been also, from this point of view, very balanced in using them so far. And this is fortunately has not been a constraint for us in the last years, and we don't expect this to be a constraint in the future, because I think we are very well positioned to raise capital.
Yeah, I looked at your publicly traded company, and I look at your stock, and when I go back to 3 or 5 years, your stock has increased by a factor of roughly 3, I would say.
Yeah.
While the German DAX index, or any other tech DAX, MDAX, whatever, just grew by 12%, right?
Yes.
So you did super well. Why do you think is your stock so interesting? And is it similar for other, like, say, competitors of Encavis?
Yeah, more or less, yes. There are differences, of course. We've been performing, I would say, extremely well, among the best ones. I think this is given by many factors. I think we've been running the company very well. We've been growing our business over the last years the way the market was expecting. We have a lot of ambitious plans sort of outstanding, in the sense that we want to do much more, and this is also publicly available. But of course, the industry itself, renewables, have become an important topic. I think that, again, the maturity of the industry has played also a role in attracting more funds and more capital. At the beginning, it was something more like, and even back in 2013, when I started, it's 9 years ago, at capital stage, renewables were something. This guys think about the environment, but yeah, we'll see what they can do. And I think that sort of history has proven us right, both in terms of, again, maturity of the technology, capability to really deliver substantial amounts of power to the grid, and enough energy, yes, to become significant as a supplier, and I think also people have understood that we have to find sustainable ways to produce the energy that we consume. I don't think it makes sense to reduce. Of course, by increasing the efficiency, it's important to reduce the overall consumption, but progress is something that all of us strive for. We want to use technology. We want to sort of be mobile somehow, but it has to all happen in a sustainable way. And I think that people have understood that, and again, I think that the industry is doing great, and it's just the beginning, to be honest. I think I'm really enthusiastic when I think about the future. I think the best is really yet to come. We're just at the very beginning. It's going to be huge.
Yeah.
And it's going to be good for all of us.
Yeah. Excellent. So another jump in the topics, you need talent to build a good company, and obviously you have managed to do that. How do you do it? How do you pick talent when you in the job interview? What do you have a special methodology, or you rely on your gut feeling, or do you have what's your way to do it?
It's an interesting question, because the war for talent is on. We see that that it's not easy to find good people. At the same time, we are very, very, very happy with our team. I think it's one of the key success factors for us in the past, and will also be the quality of the team, which is really, really, really good and really high. And I think that what we've done successfully in the last years is we've been open to also hire people who didn't really primarily come from this industry, because it is somehow still a young industry, and it's not easy to find sort of people with a lot of experience willing to move. Now it's happening. You see people basically from the competition who apply for new positions here. So it is helping us from this point of view to also acquire experienced people. But in general, we were in the past very open for cross-industry sort of applications. And this has been important. And during the process, I would say, in the end, each manager has a little bit his own style. I try to go into the meetings and into the job interviews with a very clear understanding on the hard skills. And this is usually also sort of, we have a two-stage process in which during the first stage we understand how solid the skills are, and the second one, where I usually join, is where I try to understand the motivation, the person that's sitting in front of me, and usually, and I would say this is then when I basically when I think that I've been lucky enough over the last years to sort of pick right people. I know that there is a famous bias. We have not hired people that are very, very good as well. So seeing somehow or experiencing the success that former applications at Encavis do have somewhere else is always sort of, it's always a little bit tough, because you realize, man, you maybe have lost. You could have hired somebody really, really valuable. So I'm not stating and suggesting that we are perfect in picking people, but I think that we've really managed to build a great team over the last years. And again, I think it's a combination of looking at really both things: the skills that are the basis for everything, but also the personal fit, the cultural fit, which I do consider being very important. The attitude, it is really, really what I look for. What I look after. The ability, in few words, the ability to work hard in a passionate way, but also to have a lot of fun. And I think this is what is really one of the key aspects of Encavis, of the team at Encavis. It's a bunch of people who loves to spend also time together, and this is very precious.
Yeah, excellent. The other question that has established itself as a standard, non-conventional question for let's say solar journey is project management, right? So particularly in technology, it's always difficult to predict the time, the budget you require to establish that new feature or build this new feature. For your case, it's a little bit different, right? Because it's, I would assume, to a certain extent copy paste, but still a project management is not science, but depends on so many factors. So what are the key essences of your project management to execute in time within budget?
Yeah, I mean, the most important process for us is I would say the investment process. So when we find an investment opportunity that we like, and then the team starts working on it, and hopefully then brings it to conclusion by signing the contract. This is the one that, let's say, the one process that in theory is the one which is more sort of easy to repeat. In the end, it's not exactly like that, because each project has its own peculiarities and is somehow special. From this point of view, I think that the most important skill and feature and ability is to really be quick and good in communicating. And I think this is also something where we really became good at over time. At the beginning, the investment team, when I was still working in the investment team, it was basically managing everything. So it was negotiating the contracts, it was checking sort of a little bit of the technical aspects of the different contracts, especially the O&M, if the plant was already operational. We were looking at the financing agreements. We were trying to understand, we were looking also, of course, in close cooperation with technical guys on how the overall performance of the assets was doing. And this became too much. I mean, at the beginning it was all right. When the industry was not mature enough, we could do that, but we realized that we need to have specialists in the team.
Yeah.
And I would say over the last 5 years, we've built very good teams that work together when a project becomes sort of active, and when we sort of press the button that we want to move ahead. And yes, the investment team has become, in a certain way, still the front man. The team, or the guys are still the ones who negotiate the contracts, but again, in combination with a bigger team. And here communication is key, is really key. The ability to basically bring everyone to the same level, to understand what exactly is tackled at a specific stage. And yes, we have also we have tried, or we have trained our team and some colleagues in project management. But to be honest, I believe that the biggest learnings and the biggest way to learn this job is by just doing it sort of on the job, and by having the openness to give and receive feedback in a very straight way. And I think from this point of view, we're also very good, and we are constantly improving.
Excellent. Thanks a lot for that input. Last question, as always, is so you mentioned you are excited about the future, just like I am, and I think there's plenty to do and solve, right, and contribute to the good. But what's the key essence that is required to bring solar and wind, the industry, to the next level?
The will, only the will.
Yeah.
I think that everything is available. Again, technology is there. I think the support from the population is also there. I think that by now in Europe, the majority of the people want renewables to be built out. I think it's really about the political will to allow that, to speed that up. We are still looking at a lot of projects that are delayed due to bureaucracy and sort of a lack of a clear framework in which things should happen. And this is the most frustrating aspect for me. It's really, I think that the industry and the people are much further, are much more ready for all of these to happen than I would say politics is. And this is what is needed. I remember also from my time back then as a project developer, and maybe that's why I'm pointing this specific aspect out. Back then, I really had to navigate in a jungle of unclear rules and unclear regulations, which never gave me certainty or uncertainty on, or actually never confirmed that this project will be built one day, nor allowed me to understand under which circumstances this project would have not been built, right? So it was really always this strange feeling of, is it going to happen? Is not going to happen? And I think this is what's slowing down things at the moment. There is enough capital. There is, again, the technology is there. Yes, we do have some issues on the supply chain, but I think it's temporary. I think, yes, we will have some issues on the grid, but technology is moving ahead at impressive speeds in all directions. The batteries will be ready when we need them. So I don't think that this will be the issues. I think it's really about making it happen, about defining a clear framework which assets should be built, wind or solar, and just do that.
Excellent, Mario. Thanks for sharing your insights and your enthusiasm. Wonderful. Wish you all the best for you, but also for Encavis. Thanks for coming onto the show, Mario.
Thank you very much, Todd. It has been a great pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, thanks. Bye-bye.